There is a management consultant, your best friend, sister, roommate. Let's call her Jimmy. Jimmy is hardworking, determined, a little bit messy, but she loves big cats. One day, Jimmy comes into the apartment and her left hand is in a bandage, and you ask, "Jimmy, are you okay?" Jimmy replies, "Oh, it's nothing. I cut my hand. It really hurts, but it's okay." "What happened?" you ask. "I went to the hospital after I cut my hand and they bandaged me up." "Jimmy," you say, "how did you get cut?" "Oh," Jimmy replies, "I went to the Milton Zoo. I jumped over the barriers. I navigated my way through the cages. I put my hand through the bars to stroke her." "Stroke who?" you ask. "The leopard. And the leopard scratched me. But don't worry," Jimmy says, "the leopard is okay. And I'll be okay too. And the doctors gave me a book when I left to help me be more resilient. It's called How to Stick Your Arm in a Cage with a Wild Animal and Not Get Scratched." 2 weeks later, Jimmy comes into the apartment and her forearm is in a bigger bandage. Her eyes are bloodshot red like she's been laughing or crying. You're not sure. "Are you all right?" you ask. "Yes," Jimmy nods wearily. "I took the doctor's advice. I went back to stroke a leopard. The leopard bit me this time. It really hurts, but don't worry, I'm taking full responsibility because I'm learning so much." "You went back to the Milton Zoo?" you ask. "No," Jimmy replies, "I didn't go to the Milton Zoo. I went to the Blue Victoria Zoo. And after the doctors patched me up, they suggested I get some coaching from a leopard whisperer, Arthur Albert Arthurson IV. You see, I'm not a quitter. I'm going to be," Jimmy says, "the first Black female CEO to exclusively work in leopard cages." 6 weeks later, Jimmy comes in. Her entire arm is in a cast. But what's even more striking is she is dressed head to toe in a leopard onesie. "You are not going back to the zoo," you protest. "Of course not," Jimmy laughs. "I'm not going to the zoo. I'm going to the circus. Their leopards are much more inclusive." We would never encourage a loved one to keep putting her hand in a cage with a wild animal. But as a society, it's common for us to encourage or pressure people we care about to go back into toxic workplaces, even after they've told us or we suspect it's causing them mental, emotional, or physiological harm. The problem is, whether you're Jimmy, her friend, the doctor, or the amazing Arthur Albert Arthurson IV, we don't consider workplace trauma to be real trauma. And therefore, we don't appreciate how much support people going through it need or how to help them. We think of workplace trauma, we think of firefighters, social workers, healthcare workers, and soldiers, and what they face can truly be terrible. But the truth is, people in any profession can experience workplace trauma. And it is people of color, particularly women of color, who are affected the most. According to a recent study in Forbes, 1 in 3 professional women of color are ready to leave the workplace next year. The Guardian suggests the situation is worse, estimating over half of Black women alone are debating exit in 2 years. And in a study published by Oxford University Press, it suggests Black women who face racial discrimination at work are nearly 3 times as likely to experience high levels of psychological despair compared to women who don't report that experience. Trauma, it's a powerful, sometimes life-threatening response to traumatic and distressing events like bullying, sexual assault, and toxic workplaces. And it affects our mind, our body, and our behavior. And it can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, according to Dr. Ashwani Padi, the medical superintendent, South Pacific Private Practice. Hi, I'm Jimmy. And spoiler alert, yes, I am the Jimmy in the story. For 20 years, I worked in operations and management consulting, eventually specializing in engineering portfolio project excellence. And no, it's not as complicated as it sounds. And yes, it is as boring as it sounds. But I love the work. I found it really engaging. I found the processes really interesting, and the people were nice-ish. And then one day, a senior leader told me in open company, they could have hired a white man to do my job. It was one more bucket in the ocean of verbal and physical encounters I had faced in my life. You see, I had never stuck my hands in a cage with a wild leopard, but I had been repeatedly verbally abused, sexually harassed, and physically threatened at work. I never read the book, How to Stick Your Arm in a Cage with a Wild Animal and Not Get Scratched. But in 1 year, I read 45 leadership books, spent way too much of my time and money in coaching and courses trying to figure out how to be resilient at work. I never wore a leopard print onesie to work. But I learned to suppress who I was because I was constantly told I sounded too American, too black, too much. And I learned to take racist jokes in good humor. So when they said to me they could have hired a white man to do my job, I was devastated, tired, and humiliated. And sometime after that, I took a break from the corporate world, and I decided to do the next logical thing. I would produce a feature-length documentary film about the workplace, and it was going to be epic. In preparation, we interviewed dozens of professional women of color from around the world. From Asia, North America, South America, Africa, and Europe, we spoke to women specializing in nuclear power, to government, from healthcare, to even faith-based organizations. And let me share with you some of what we found. First, we found these women telling us over and over and over, I'm desperately unhappy. I can't go on. With some admitting that death might be a better option. You see, a key tool for coping with workplace trauma we found was fantasizing, planning, and attempting suicide. Second, we learned from these conversations that workplace racial and gender trauma can take years to recover from, with many women afraid they would never, ever get better. And thirdly, we found, almost devastatingly universally agreed, was that the actions of leadership consistently made things worse. Take Tanika, a 20-year marketing veteran. Tanika had been bullied for years by her senior manager, Richard. Tanika proactively found another role in a different division within her company. Yay, Tanika! But Molly, Tanika's vice president and Richard's boss, refused to approve the transfer. Molly said Tanika had to learn to get over her petty differences with Richard and stay. So Tanika decided to take her life. Her attempt only failed because she was interrupted partway through. We spoke to several senior leaders about what we were learning about these issues, and many of them admitted it was unfortunate, but not really their job. You see, they had to focus on leadership and not on initiatives. So this could be the environment in which your loved one is working. How do we support people going through workplace trauma? especially if they're unable to or struggling to articulate what's going on with them, like I was. Good news. I have a quick win, magic bullet hack that helped the people in my life figure out a little bit better what I was going through. Here's what you do. You demand the person who you think might have trauma take about 2 years off work, hire a professional production crew, travel around the country conducting dozens and dozens of interviews, and then produce for you a 73-minute and 12-second documentary film, because that's what I did, and it worked. But some of you don't look convinced. That was a joke. Please don't ask anyone to do that. If you do ask them, don't call my name. Seriously though, how can we help people going through workplace trauma? Let's explore ways people often respond to evidence of workplace trauma and what we all could do differently instead. 1, a typical response we find to evidence of workplace trauma is comparing. It's when we say, you were in a cage with a lion or a leopard, or a tiger maybe. Well, my hamster scratched me once, so I completely understand what it's like to be in a cage with some sort of wild animal. Or we try to one-up them. You were in a cage with a leopard. Well, I was in a cage with a dinosaur with lasers in their eyes. Comparing hurts because it trivializes, minimizes, and dismisses the experience, the pain of the other person. Plus, it puts us in the center of the conversation. So instead of comparing, I'm asking us to listen. Hold space for the person to share and unburden. Let them speak freely without fear of advice giving, judgment, or shame. It's only when we truly listen can we really begin to appreciate what exactly is going on, what help is wanted, and more importantly, what help is needed. A second reaction to evidence of workplace trauma I'll share today is questioning. It's asking, are you sure that's what happened? Were you even there when they did that to you? Maybe you were abducted by aliens right when they did that to you. Questioning hurts because it puts the person already in pain under additional pressure to convince us, rather than receiving support, relief, or comfort. And questioning might be interpreted as us not believing them. So they have faced abuse at work. They now meet their friend and loved one who's implying that they're lying. But Jimmy, I hear you say, we need some context. We just can't take their word for it, can we? I am a survivor of sexual assault, and I am grateful for rarely being asked if I misunderstood what happened to me or to provide a greater context. Instead of asking people to relive truly horrific events so we're satisfied, I'm asking us to believe when they say these things happen and use other resources, books, research papers, documentaries, even court transcripts to get the greater context. And the final response to evidence of workplace trauma I will be sharing today is the big one. It is the act of doing nothing. The polite silence, the patient nodding, the declaring, I am not going to take a side. It's hiding behind abusive policies and saying we're just following company procedure. It's failing to initiate anything, corrective action, investigations, or always being confused about what to do next. Inaction hurts. It really hurts. because we send a message to the person in pain that we are okay with the mistreatment going on and we are not safe people to go to for help. It hurts because it can make a person feel like they're alone in a group, and there is no pain like isolation. The Centers for Disease Control state that prolonged isolation causes mental and physiological harm. So instead of doing nothing, I'm asking us to act. Do something, anything. We'll make mistakes, but keep going because I'm rooting for you. I believe in you. I believe in us. I really think we can change the world. Or, at the very least, someone you care about should not have to make a feature-length film in order to feel that you hear, believe, and support them. Thank you.